shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast for this week. I am Dr. Wanda Lee McPhee, and I'm hosting this episode with my guest, Dr. Wendy Nickerson. Dr. Wendy is a licensed psychologist in both Nova Scotia, Canada, and Arizona in the U.S., and is the founder of the International Health Coaching Enterprises and the Integrative Health Coach Training Program, a program that's focused on providing holistic mental health education and certification. She's also the author of the book, Wild Women Never Get the Blues, How to Tap into Your Intuition to Create Your Best Life. I think we're going to have a very exciting discussion today, and thank you for joining me, Dr. Wendy.
Wanda, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, as you know from looking into our podcast, we really focus on the science of epigenetics and the concept that well-being is a three-legged stool. It's a combination of our physical, our chemical, and our emotional and spiritual health. So it's great to have an opportunity to talk about the emotional and spiritual side of that. That's sometimes the piece that is most difficult for people to find solutions in. And the concept of holistic mental health is a really perfect fit for our audience and for us.
Yes, I agree.
So tell us, what is an integrative health coach?
An integrative health coach is really a fancy name for a mental health coach, or at least the program, the Integrative Health Coach Training Program that I have developed is. It is an in-between stage between a peer support worker and a psychologist. The reason that I developed the Integrative Health Coach Training Program was to fill a gap in the system, because working as a psychologist for as long as I have, I'm realizing that there are huge holes in the system, and a lot of what we're doing is so superficial and just barely touching the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to develop a career position for people whereby they didn't have to go to university for 10 years, but yet if they had the propensity and the desire to help people with mental health or emotional or spiritual issues, that they could get that training in actually 4 months and be certified to help people. In addition to that, I wanted to bypass the stigma. I mean, there's still such a huge stigma around mental health issues. And by especially teenagers working with an integrative health coach, it doesn't signify that there's anything wrong with them. Teenagers are used to coaches. They're used to that term coach, in sports. So it was a way to get the tools and education to the young people early, before the problems manifested into something more serious like addiction or suicide in late teenage, late adolescence, or adulthood. So that's why I developed the program. And so many people are confused because they think that it's a health coach where you learn about nutrition. And actually, nutrition is included in integrative health coaching because, of course, behavioral nutrition indicates, all the research indicates that what we eat dictates the health of our mind and our brain and our emotions. And so I have included that in the program also. I've also included spiritual aspects of spirituality, not religion, but spirituality into the program. The reason that I developed these additional aspects of well-being into the program was because I realized in the 10 years of training that I had as a psychologist, I was never taught. Not once was it mentioned that if we are low in B12, D3, and the omegas, that it doesn't matter how many antidepressants we take, we're going to get minimal effect because our body needs needs these nutrients for our brain to work properly. In your position, Wanda, another example would be if our spine is out of alignment and our spine is attached to our brain, then it seems quite clear to me that the energy is not going to flow properly throughout our brain and our body. So the importance of having proper spinal alignment in terms of having good emotional health. It can't be overstated. I mean, it's just so important. Yeah. And so a lot of people think that it's about exercise, that I teach about exercise and nutrition, but no, it's so much more than that. It's about cognitive, behavioral strategies and treatment, rational, emotive strategies and treatment, using motivational interviewing to help clients change their behaviors, because we are creatures of habit. And it's often not easy to get clients to change their behaviors, especially after they've had a heart attack, for instance, and we want them to change their behaviors and their thoughts, and they're in their 50s. It may be a little challenging if the practitioner does not have the skills of motivational interviewing to kind of trick them into wanting to change their behaviors and their thoughts. And while I was at it in developing the program, I thought they might as well also learn about psychoneuroimmunology, basically mind-body connection, and how certain belief systems and schemas and patterns of thought actually create certain diseases. For example, with cancer, there's so much research that establishes that if we hold a lot of resentment and shame, and have trauma, lots of complex trauma in our past, we are at very high risk for cancer. And I could go through all the details of explaining the biology of that. I won't do that right now because it will take up too much time and I'll probably bore the listeners. But, that's one example. And, arthritis is so related to resentment, feeling stuck. Like our fingers won't move. We're stuck. Our legs won't move. We feel stuck in a job we don't like, stuck in a marriage we don't want, stuck in a certain identity that isn't really who we are. These types of aspects of well-being need to be included in mental health training. And so that's why I've included this and much more in the program, because I want people that are working with other people trying to enhance, generational levels of trauma and emotional difficulties, trying to reduce them. I want them to know as much as they can from as many angles as possible, such that they're not just using one tool fits all type of strategy, which is how I was taught as a psychologist. One tool fits all, and that tool is cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, the problem with that is if someone has complex trauma from the time they were born or even prenatal, like if they were an unwanted child and they received that essence and that energy while they were in the womb, they came into this world with the beginnings of complex trauma of not feeling wanted, not feeling safe, and knowing that on a pre-verbal level. And so teaching clients about trauma, given that trauma is at the very core of all mental and physical illnesses, and that's been proven over and over again, is so important. I did not even take a course on trauma in all of my years of study. It wasn't until I started teaching it and being trained under experts in the field that I even learned about it. And I'm thinking, I can't believe that I was certified as a psychologist without any training in the very thing that causes psychological challenges. So I feel very passionate about this. I just feel that if it's part of their life's purpose, if they have the ability to connect with others and build rapport and help create a safe space, that they do not need all of these years of training to be of great assistance to those who have emotional challenges. And I'm also a great believer that we are not meant to be suffering. It's just not our nature to be suffering with emotional challenges. And yes, I do think that we learn from a lot of negative experiences that we go through in life, but this continual suffering and addictions and trauma and suicide that's passed down through the generations, I don't think that is the way life is meant to be. I think there's a lot we can do about it.
Absolutely. And that's a really nice summary for people who are listening or who are thinking, I would like to get involved in doing something more in this avenue. And of course, on the flip side of that are the clients, like the people who would benefit the most from an integrative health coach or a mental health coach. Obviously, like you mentioned, a lot of our mental health system is geared towards the crisis. It's geared towards the suicide attempts or the breakdown and the place where people are literally at their final wits end of what they can do emotionally and psychologically, as opposed to focusing on those challenges earlier, upstream, and building more optimal well-being mentally, which seems to be where you're filling the niche. Someone doesn't have to have a crisis or a significant issue, but a sense that something's maybe just not right in order to benefit from talking to an integrative health coach.
Yes, the sense that something's not just right, as you said, but also the sense that something's missing, or the sense that they have a purpose in life that they're not fulfilling, or a sense that they could have a higher quality of life and they know it. They just don't have the tools to create that for themselves. Mm-hmm. Very simple tools. One very simple tool, Wanda, is our breath, and how our breath, if we learn to breathe properly, can reduce anxiety, the equivalent of anti-anxiety medication. And, from a spiritual perspective, people would say that's because our breath connects us to our higher self or to spirit. And once we're connected to spirit, we automatically calm down, because spirit isn't chaotic. Spirit isn't fearful. It isn't ridden with fear. It has a higher level frequency emotions. More like joy and peace and contentment and positive expectancy.
So for someone who's listening maybe right now, this is such a great conversation. If someone's listening right now and they're been searching for something or a better way to manage anxiety, where do you start people with breath work? Is it more of a focus on the breath? Is there a particular breathing pattern that you endorse, or how do you deal with giving people those tools? I think that's a great practical example of how people can change simple things and get a huge benefit.
What I do is I start people off with 1 minute of breathing, and here's how I do it. I ask them to breathe in, put their hands on their belly, and push their belly out, and hold their breath for a moment, and breathe out. And I ask them to do it again. Put their hands on their belly. Breathe in, hold it, and breathe out. I ask them to do it a third time, and I ask them to breathe in, hands on belly, Belly goes out. And they breathe in all light and love. White light and love. And they feel it going all through their body. And they breathe out anything that is bothering them. They let it go and they imagine it in their mind going away from them, flying away. And then the last time, breathe in, belly out. Breathing in white light, feeling it, seeing it covering their body, their whole body. They're just covered with light and love. Breathing out and watching anything that's bothering them just fly away. It just goes whoosh. So they breathe out and push their belly in. So just starting with that, with very, new clients, just starting, they will start to learn how their body and their mind starts to feel different. What they don't realize by doing that simple exercise that takes about a minute is that they have started to regenerate new neurological pathways in their brain that lead to higher levels of thought and understanding and more positive thoughts. And that is just the beginning, because if someone wants to start off doing that on the hour for 12 hours a day, just start off, just take a minute. You can do it while you're on the toilet. You can do it while you're in a parked car. You don't have to be stretched out. You can do it while you're walking. And that in itself will start the healing process, just from a physiological point of view. And one of the great things about neuroplasticity, and that is the redevelopment of the neurological pathways in the brain, is that we can do it ourselves just by using our breath and using our visualization. It just starts to shift everything, the patterns of thought and our reactions and our emotions. It starts to shift everything. It does take work. It takes commitment. It takes wanting to feel good. Keeping in mind that all of us have experienced trauma at some point. Many professionals, speak to the notion that we experience trauma just coming down through the birth canal or being born, coming from outside of the uterus into the open world. And of course, the most insidious form of trauma that goes unrecognized is an insecure parental attachment, because a baby needs attachment. And again, this is all research-based, Wanda. Much evidence on this. A baby needs attachment right from the first hour that they're born. It needs to feel that essence of attachment, needs to see that attachment with their mom or dad or somebody, in order for their brain to start developing properly. So when young children that are pre-verbal experience an insecure attachment with a parent, if a parent is stressed, parents don't mean to create insecure attachments, but parents have a lot of responsibilities. And if they're stressed, they cannot always be there for that child. And again, it's on a continuum. Some parents are better than others. When I was growing up, for example, survival. My parents were focused on survival. They surely weren't thinking about providing secure attachments with all of us kids. And what that does is it creates an underlying sense of being unsafe. And it's pre-verbal, it's wired right into our systems on every level, neurologically. And these types of children are usually withdrawn, with the extreme, they're usually shy or withdrawn. And others have it, and they're very sociable, and you would never know it. So I guess where I'm coming from is that we've all experienced trauma. So, which means that none of us have the optimal development of our brain and our emotional systems that we could have because of that. But we do have the power to change that. And Wanda, there's so many other ways to change that, but the breath is the most simplest. We have to breathe anyway. It's the most simplest, it's the most easiest, and it's the fastest way for people to start to feel differently.
I really love that, because when so many people, especially in the mental health field, talk about trauma, it's with the concept of victimhood. And what we're not talking about victimhood here, we're talking about empowering change. And that is such a more purposeful and visionary place to take that trauma than wallowing in the optional suffering. You did mention that suffering is optional. We all have challenges we deal with, and falling in that victim role can be so easy, whereas getting into that empowered, inspired, motivated state to change and to transcend that trauma is really what you're talking about here.
And Wanda, that may actually be the reason why they have experienced the trauma in the first place, was so that they could break the generational pattern, so that they could demonstrate, hey, yeah, I've had that trauma too, but I've learned to have peaceful moments despite it. Just because someone has a diagnosis of PTSD or complex trauma does not mean that they cannot experience many, many moments in the run of a day of intense peacefulness and connection and joy. So yeah, and in doing so, what are they doing? They are, because of their suffering, and they don't want to suffer anymore, so they want to learn new ways to get rid of the suffering, especially down through their family pattern line. In doing so, what are they doing? They're teaching their children. Because they're calming themselves down and reducing their trauma symptoms. They're not passing it on to their children. They're calmer. They have more compassion. They don't react as quickly negatively. Their children are watching them doing their breathing. They might, especially if they're teenagers, the teenagers might be making fun of them. I remember when I was living in Arizona, my grandson came and lived with me, and he was 15, and I would be doing, especially if it was a day when I had a lot on my plate and I was under a lot of stress, I'd be doing my breathing. Well, he would laugh and laugh. He thought that was hilarious. And so, but I notice now that he's 20, that he uses that technique to deal with his anxiety. So we do have an effect on the people that are watching our behaviors that seem a little out of the norm.
Absolutely. And one other tool that you have is your book. You authored a book, Wild Women Never Get the Blues, How to Tap into Your Intuition to Create Your Best Life.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I think that would be intriguing.
Oh my gosh, that book, I published that book in 2004. I was actually working in Nova Scotia at the time, at Truro Mental Health, and I was putting together this book because I noticed so many clients, and I noticed in myself too, I'm certainly not exempt from this, that people were showing up with signs of Great Depression, and it had gone on for years. I noticed that when they learned to get quiet and tap into their inner voice and find out what they were really here for, and started taking steps to put that plan of action into gear, that their depression started to lift. They would be more upbeat, they would be more vibrant, they couldn't wait to do whatever it was that they knew they were passionate about doing. Time would go by very quickly for them. They would spend hours doing it, and they were able to tap into their joy. So the title of the book, Wild Women Never Get the Blues, doesn't mean women dancing on the tabletops being wild. It means being wild, like a wild animal that pays attention to its instincts and its intuition. It means getting out of that socialized conformity that we as women, and men too, but we as women have been forced to conform to in order to get approval. And so part of that, of course, is tapping into our intuition, because we have to tap into that to figure out what our sacred contract is for coming here on earth and what our true purpose is. So that's why I wrote the book, to encourage women to go through the process of following their passion and purpose in life. And the depression lifting was, icing on the cake in the process of doing that.
Well, that is so true for so many people. The chemistry it does change for people, but that is secondary to when they don't feel value in what they're doing. They don't feel purposeful. They don't feel like their time is meaningful, that their work is meaningful, that their being is meaningful. So anything that can guide people along that path is a wonderful tool.
Absolutely it is. And people, the latest research on addiction is showing that the greatest way to curb addiction is to help people connect to other people, connect to their community, or connect to themselves, or connect to their higher self, or connect to their purpose. Connection is big in the research today in terms of mental and emotional and physical well-being. And so connecting to who we really are is part of that. Although at the time when I wrote the book, I did not know that all this research was going to come out to substantiate that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we are getting short on time now, and I don't want to cut off this conversation, but I'd love if we make sure we include a little final thought for our listeners from you, Dr. Wendy. I know that we've talked about a wide variety of things, and people will likely go back and listen to it again because it's hard to capture all of those tidbits in one go through. That's the great thing about a free podcast. But is there a final thought that you could leave to encourage our listeners to find out more? And of course, we'll include all of your information in our notes as well, so they'll be able to reach you.
Okay, great. Wanda, there's so many final thoughts, but the one that is coming to my mind right now is be aware of how great thou art. I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that as a reflection of one's mere creation, of their being created. Just the fact that we are created. Know that we are created in the divine image of something much greater than our body, and that we have a design purpose, a divine purpose, that we can tap into, and we can take the step to follow that purpose, and the bridge will be there. Because, even those people that believe in God, there isn't a creator. I can't imagine a creator or a God that would put a divine passion in someone, or put a strong passion, whether it's musical, artistic, or whatever it is, in someone, and then say, "Oh, no, I'm going to give you that passion, but I'm not going to give you the means to accomplish that or do that in this lifetime." And so just taking the step, knowing that the bridge will be there. And I believe a woman in Ontario actually wrote that book, Take the Step and the Bridge Will Be There. And so that would be my overall statement or tidbit, Wanda. I just feel so passionate about that, and mostly because, I have taken so many leaps of faith myself from being a high school dropout and being pregnant, in high school and being on welfare for so many years and then going to school and following my passion and it wasn't as if the red carpet was rolled out for me, but we take it in small steps and we just keep listening. And when we do that, we help create a better existence for everyone on earth in our own little way. We all do it in our own little way. And in a little way, it's actually a big way.
Absolutely. So a couple of things we're going to include with the notes today are more information about how to find out about the training program for integrative health coaching, because that is obviously going to be of interest to some people out there listening that feel called to explore that a little bit further, and perhaps some information about how someone might find an integrative health coach or access the services of an integrative health coach as well. So we'll include that. Is there a website that you could direct them to right now?
Absolutely. All of that is on my website. It's www.drwendynickerson.com. That is spelled DrWendyNickerson.com. And on my website, there is a page all about the integrative health coaching program. The next program starts on September the 4th. And also it lists the integrative health coaches that I have trained. All of their graduate pictures and their information is on the website under graduates, I think it is. Yeah.
Perfect. That would be great for people. And it will be a wonderful thing to perhaps follow up later on and see if any of our listeners become graduates of your program. And I hope you'll get back in touch with us and let us know the results of that as time goes on.
Wanda, I will do that. I will absolutely do that. I'm just delighted to continue with the program, and I'll be in touch with you.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this week on Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed taking the time to chat today with Dr. Wendy Nickerson. Please share this with someone you know if you think that they could benefit from the information. We're all on a mission here to empower the world. We want tools, strategies, and knowledge that can make our collective well-being grow, physically, chemically, and emotionally. And we thank you for sharing in our passion. We appreciate you for joining us this week, and we hope to talk to you next week as well. For more information, check out our website, www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Stay connected with our weekly newsletter and check out any special events and special product offers that we may have online this week. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.